Welcome to Ask GMBN Tech, where you get to ask us questions through the hashtag Ask GMBN Tech. Fire away with all your questions. We've got one here, which is a good one. It's from Alex Boost, and he says he attempted a lower leg service. Good.
Excellent.
Do them very often. This on a suspension fork, not just your own lower leg. His dust wiper, so that's the seal that you can see on the top, didn't come off cleanly. I feel like we probably need to see some pictures because this doesn't sound great. There's a lot of rubber residue and the seal tore apart. Possibly indicative that I fear it has. Yeah. So the rest of the question goes on to kind of ask a bit more. I think unfortunately you've just got to be really careful and really patient. Maybe just use a small plastic like tweezer, pokey stick, for want of a better word.
Yeah, maybe a worn out old tyre lever to scratch the big bits off.
Choice. That's a good one.
Or a scouring pad.
Scouring pad is an excellent option. Obviously not one of the metal
wire
ones.
walls,
No, like the kind of ones for non-stick pans.
Anything that's softer than the metal itself so that you don't scratch it, I would say is a good bet.
And just be sensible and take your time with it. Unfortunately, there's no like quick remedy. It's not like, just put it in the oven at gas mark 2 for 3 hours and it'll all melt out, because I feel like other bits will melt off.
But could he put it on the radiator maybe to sort of like warm up the rubber a little bit, make it a bit more malleable? Would that help? I mean, it won't hurt,
No,
will
it won't hurt, really. You might get kind of like a old PE kit smell from kind of like the old oil in there. But I mean, no, that would be one way. But yeah, just elbow grease really is the only thing.
Do it and let us know how you get on. My question is from Steve, who said, should I lube my chain after every ride? Good question. No, it's not imperative that you do, but there's so many factors. What? Steve?
No, more just the lube. No, you're right.
There's so many other factors involved in this, right? If you're on a nice, short, dry bike ride, it's possible that whatever lube you're using might not have worn off. If you're going through wet terrain, if you've washed it afterwards, if it's been a really long, gritty, dirty ride, then it's possibly it has worn off. So the answer is, if your lube has worn off, yes, replace it for whatever reason that has caused that. If it hasn't worn off, you don't need to just lube it just willy-nilly for the sake of it. The whole point of lube is to just add that buffer to stop your chain wearing out pretty quickly. And it won't be the end of the world if you don't do it quickly. It just might be quite noisy.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, I'd say don't forget you need to degrease it. I think lots of people get really gung-ho in terms of, do I need to oil every ride? Well, as you've outlined, probably not really. But the bigger thing is if you're about to oil it, is like, don't just splash on the oil that you've used before. You've got to actually clean the chain, because the oil that's been on there is going to be contaminated with lots of, all the stuff that you've ridden through.
Assuming your lube is oil-based and you haven't used PT's wet lube, which is water-based, which doesn't need super harsh degreasers to get off.
It doesn't, no.
That's
a really good shout.
Yeah. But yes, basically, short answer, no.
Okay, we've got a next question now from Krr 927. I think that's how you pronounce it, technically. Yeah.
Sire Krr. I don't think it's important, is it?
I think Krr.
Should we linger on this longer?
We should. Do I really need to follow the sizing recommended by the manufacturer? I'm a large on my current 275 bike, but I want to upgrade to 29er, but the manufacturer says I'm a medium. Can't I just go for a large and 29er as well? I mean, you can, of course you can. You can go for whichever bike you want, but lots of bikes have gotten a lot longer, lots of geometries have changed, and a medium is not a medium anymore. So if the manufacturer is recommending for your height that you should go to a medium, then I would, probably go with that. They've made their bikes, they know what sort of geometry it's suited to.
But also brands do have a different idea of what bike fit is like, and some brands think that longer is better and some brands think that shorter is better. I wonder if geometry charts might be something we can look at to compare. That's
a fantastic thing. That's what I was going to say sort of next is just, measure your current bike. Reach and stack are kind of really hard measurements we often talk about. It's got the reach and stack are really good, but it's kind of hard measurement to do at home accurately. Top tube measurement is relatively easy. And it's a ballpark and it's a starting point. Obviously, make sure you know where your saddle height is.
Like if, for example, you liked the reach or the sort of the filling of the roominess,
front centre is a better, potentially better term.
or just checking the front center measurement in the geometry chart.
Yep.
If you liked that particular feel of your 27 in your old large, then compare that number to the reach on your new 29er, and they might actually be quite similar, and that's why they're recommending a medium. Either way, you can actually go on something like geometrygeek.com, I believe. There is a geometry comparison website where you can actually just upload both your bikes and see whether they are longer, shorter, or stackier or not.
Yeah, and see where those contact points are, because like the new medium might have the same top tube, but it's got a longer stem or shorter stem. And I imagine if your 275 bike is from a while ago, it might have been designed actually for a
longer stem.
Yeah, exactly. And you might have put a shorter stem on, so that's kind of like shortened the effective reach of it. So the new manufacturer's medium might be a medium for them, whatever their sizing is, but it might now come with only a 50mm stem, whereas only 5-6 years ago 50mm stems weren't on XC bikes. And now it's standard, so have a look at that geo chart.
User Gibberlula says, how would I figure out how many volume spacers or tokens I put in my suspension? Good question. Answer is, I don't know. There's no formula, is there? There's no sort of hard and fast rule here. So volume spacers or tokens are exactly that. They change the volume on your fork or your shock if you're playing around with the rear. And generally, that sort of controls how quickly you ramp up in the bottom end of your stroke, because that air compresses and then it sort of, it basically will affect how easy or hard it is for you to bottom out your fork. It doesn't tend to affect the top stroke, in my opinion. It's mainly for the bottom out. So if you are bottoming out a lot, add some tokens. If you are not bottoming out,
assume you've got your sag set up. So sag set up. And if you're still like bottoming out and you've got the requisite sag that your brand says, and we say brand because on a fork, it's like one-to-one travelling on the rear because there's like a suspension curve, and that changes how the shock's ratio is squeezed, which might be the next thing I'm about to say. So sorry.
No, that's fine.
But play with volume space if you're bottoming out.
Yeah, but if you like everything else, but in forks, yes, one-to-one. So if you weren't bottoming out on your forks and you wanted a slightly more linear feel, as in they just continuously feel bottomless and they don't tend to ramp up towards the bottom, then have less. But generally, sorry, there is no magic formula.
William Trudel.
Oh.
Yeah, he's got a really good question here. He wants to upgrade his rear rotor from a 180 to a 200. He's got SRAM G2R. Which caliper do I need, 10mm or 20mm? It's for a 2021 Stump Jumper Comp alloy. And we need to provide the part number. Whew. Okay, this is a really good question. And to be honest, I don't... So you're going from 180 to 200, okay.
So I know that this stump, because I had a look, but this stump jumper is as standard a 180, I believe.
Perfect.
But it's good to point out that different frames are as standard for different sizes.
Well, annoyingly, and forks now too. So back in the day, when discs were new, we all had 160s front and rear, and then you had to have various spacing adapters, and then it was like up to plus 60 and these bonkers things. Thankfully, forks and bike brands then realised that actually we should probably move this international standard spacer further and further out. So new boxes, you can only stick a 200 or a 220 on there. It's great. So thankfully, you've already done the research, which is super. So 180 stock, you need to add 20mm to it. So a 20mm spacer is what you need. In terms of part number,
it doesn't matter.
No,
just look
fine.
For a 20mm adapter, basically.
And from memory, like SRAM brakes, whereas some of the Magura, some of the Hayes, the way that the caliper is shaped, it sort of almost interferes because of the certain angle it is. But with the SRAM ones, they've designed them quite nicely. You can just stack all those adapters on. So, but good idea.
Stay brand with the brand. So, because obviously Shimano can go up to 203 discs, and they might need slightly different adapter. So, if you're running G2s or SRAM, get yourself a SRAM 20mm adapter to go from 180 to 200. If there are anyone out there that's wanting to go from 160 to 200, for example, that's 40mm bigger, you would need a 40mm adapter. If your forks were 200 as standard, then you wouldn't run any adapter,
Yeah.
I think is fair to say. So adapters are just there to make up that difference, but do try and stick with the brands because they can be a bit different, can't they? Oh, and last but not least is Jan Cortez, who says, a common way to transport your mountain bike to trails is to remove the front wheel. Are there any potential issues with constantly removing and torquing down the front through axle, easy for you to say, especially for carbon frames? I mean, it doesn't matter that you've got a carbon or aluminium, you should always be torquing up to spec, anything torquing up to spec. And if we're talking about the front axle for a fork, I don't think that's going to affect your frame so much anyway. So I wouldn't worry about that. And when it comes to forks, yes, you do want to be torquing that to manufacturer's spec, even though that's not carbon as well, probably. I doubt you've got a carbon fork. But does it affect it long term? Probably not. I wouldn't say so. As long as you're
not
sort of
ham-fisted,
Yeah.
then it's fine. As long as you're kind of not
if he's
like
going
just
up to-
swinging off it, and you're really sensible. Because some of them have got like a floating. I say like the Fox is a good example. They've got like the floating captive bit on the other side. So yeah, as long as you're doing it nicely and it's all greased,
Well,
then,
just
as you've said,
going
perfect.
up to what the manufacturers say you should be talking it to. But when you're sort of loosely putting it into the car, no. But the only thing I will say is that your axle is exposed to sort of dirt and debris, and it's going to potentially get a bit drier, so you might get a bit more friction in there. I would just keep it clean, keep it greased if you're doing that regularly. The thing that would concern me more is, accidentally knocking your front brake lever, and because your pads can move in and then you can accidentally adjust your bike point. So that for me would be more of a concern than my axle.
You can get the little plastic spacers which to check
Exactly.
in there if you're ever worried. So
Yeah, it's a good idea. But that's all we've got time for. So if you have any burning questions right now, then don't forget to use hashtag Ask GMBN Tech down in the comments below right now, and we'll try and answer it in the next show. That's all we've got time for. I've said it again. Goodbye.